Welcome to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show, empowering your real estate investing with techniques, opportunities, and information, minus the BS and sales pitches. Now, please welcome the host of the Investor Empowerment Series, Joe Mueller, from the Tough as Nails Investment Syndicate. Joe Mueller.
Hey, you're back for the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. This is episode number 35, Strategizing Your Flip. Man, I was just talking to my buddy Tim, who is my former contractor who turned investor and still kind of my contractor, about one of the subjects to discuss on the podcast, and this kind of came up in conversation. I was trying to get him on the podcast because he's finishing a flip right now that we just put on the market last week that he did a beautiful job on in Crystal Lake, Illinois. He's got a real nice, healthy spread on it, and I'm real proud of the fact that it came out so perfect, and I know we're going to find a great buyer. We're getting a ton of showings on this property. It's only been on the market for about a week, maybe just over a week or so. So hopefully we'll see some results in that soon. We're going to get him on the podcast. That said, one of the things we started talking about was how to strategize your flip. And I guess what I mean by that is before maybe you even go look at a property, you've already determined what market that this property's in, right? Maybe you're only looking in certain markets for certain reasons. As a matter of fact, I just had a phone call with a new investor the other day who's going to start working with us, who has done 5 or 6 flips in the last 12 months or so, and he only has done flips in the town he lives in. And he had some really good arguments as to why, other than the fact that he was very familiar with that town, was the fact that he had some of the big box stores. He had a Menards and a Home Depot within less than a 5-minute drive from his personal residence. The properties themselves were all within 15 minutes of his personal residence because they're in the same town. And, you know, most importantly, he knew what this town offered and what was available to that end buyer, which helped him determine how to finish that house as a rehab. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to keep this short and sweet and try to get some good information out to you guys. Number one, like we talked about, you've determined your market, right? If you haven't, you need to determine your market because that's going to help you determine your buyer. Everything I've heard is, you know, if you're going by the generational gaps that are currently occurring in our country, like millennials and baby boomers and things like that, the baby boomers, from what I've been told, are moving into smaller residences, typically closer to larger metropolitan areas, for example, the city of Chicago, and they're looking for maintenance-free spaces like condominiums, maybe townhomes, but they want to be near nightlife and they want to have stuff that, you know, complements their life in a way that doesn't, create more frustration for them. So the closer they are to public transportation, for example, or having a parking garage handy with the building that they're owning in, all things to consider if you're going to be flipping, let's say, a condo in a metropolitan area. So who's your buyer in that? Maybe a baby boomer, or maybe most likely a baby boomer. Because the people that are moving out of those areas are typically people that we're seeing now in that millennial generation, or maybe a little bit older, which I think is where I'm at. I don't know if that's Generation Y or Generation X, one of those. I'm one of those, I think. So those types of buyers or those types of individuals are hanging up their hat on the condo and trying to move out further away from the metropolitan areas, but still want the better school districts and the amenities that are available to them if possible. They want a single-family home, your bread-and-butter type situations, maybe a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath with a garage. You know, that's the guy you see that's going to be outside on a Saturday morning, you know, washing his car in the driveway and waving at all the neighbors, right? Maybe a baby's on the way or baby number 2's on the way. So you have to accommodate those types of buyers when you're doing a single-family house flip. Then you've kind of got a different type of buyer that's going to be what I would like to call like your move-up buyer. Your move-up buyer is going to be somebody that's going to be moving from that smaller home into a larger version of the home, maybe in the same area or improving upon the area. Now that their kids are typically of school age is what makes those decisions. So let's just recap real quick, and I'll finish up on the move-up buyer. So you've got your baby boomers that are moving into the condominium market or the townhome market closer to metropolitan areas because they want to be close to the nightlife and the amenities. They're empty nesters. Kids are out of the house. They want to go do something with their life now. or do more with their life now and spend their own time doing whatever it is they want to do, playing with model trains or reading books by the shore. Who knows? You've got what I would typically call like your first-time home buyer who's maybe moving out of the city from an apartment or from a small condo into what we'd call like a bread-and-butter starter home. That's going to be like your 3 or 4 bedroom, 1-bath type ranches, maybe a 2-story, but most likely a smaller home. In a good area, school districts are important, but maybe not that important. Probably proximity to family and how they've grown up is even more important than that. So if they're of a certain nationality, they might want to be closer to an area that holds a lot of those types of people in that area. Or if their family lives in or around a certain community in the suburbs of Chicago, for example, just using Chicago as an example, could be anywhere in the country, they want to be close to those types of people. And their price range is probably what we're going to see more in like that FHA buyer range, right? I think FHA now goes up to $430,000 or $470,000, which is pretty high actually. But you're looking for people that are like your bread and butter type buyers, depending on the area, probably less than $300,000, most likely less than $200,000. Maybe one of them works and one's at home with the baby or however it's going to work for them. So that's your first-time buyer, that's your startup buyer, that's your bread-and-butter type buyer. A lot of people are looking to get into flipped homes that meet their needs at a good price that is all brand new. So those are a big part of most flippers markets. And then I touched on the move-up buyer. So the move-up buyer, again, is going to be that same couple who had their 2 kids, and now the kids maybe get into school-age type, elementary school type stuff, or even middle or high school. If the high school in the area that they have been raising their kids in their 3-bedroom, 1-bath ranch is not as good as they'd like it to be, they might want to move into a better school district. They want a bigger house. Typically, they're 10 years into their career. This is me, by the way. This is my generation. Maybe they've worked somewhere for 10 or 15 years. They've got a solid job. They're making probably, the best money they've made in their life, and they're stable. They've got a handle on finances. They're going to want to move into a bigger home. So maybe instead of their 3-bedroom, 1-bath ranch that's only 1,100 square feet, they're going to upgrade to something double the size, have more room for the kids, maybe have an additional playroom or a study, maybe a home office. They definitely want a garage at that point. So all these things need to be kind of considered when you are first choosing your market, making sure that, you've got this flexibility available to you as an investor. So when you actually find your opportunity, you know who your end buyer is, right? So we're going to work backwards. If you're going to be working in condos, maybe it's going to be, if you're going to be flipping condos, maybe you're going to be appealing, or you should be appealing more likely to that baby boomer generation or the single professional, which again is most likely going to be potentially that baby boomer style. When I say that could be somebody who's divorced but still has a good job, again, wants to be close to the metropolitan area to continue to work, or somebody who's retiring or retired and wants to start kind of living a better life closer to those amenities. If you're going to be in the single-family market, you basically have, obviously there's houses that are all different sizes and styles. But let's keep it simple for the sake of the podcast. That's my favorite thing. Kiss it. Keep it simple, stupid. 3-bedroom, 1-bath ranch type stuff with a basement or without, maybe a garage. That's going to be a startup buyer. So if you're looking at those types of properties, consider that the fact is you're going to be taking in buyers that are moving out of apartments or buying their first house for the first time, so first-time home buyers. And then the third one, again, is that move-up style buyer that's going to be looking for a bigger house, maybe 2,000 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 1.5, 2.5 baths. Definitely need a garage at that point. Probably you want to have a basement because that's what these people are going to be looking for. That's the time of their life where they're going to have the established friendships. Their social life is probably going to be more family oriented. School friends for their kids. Coaches from other teams, long-term childhood friends that they're still in touch with, and everyone's going to be getting together. And it's almost like a status symbol of their lifestyle. Everybody wants a big house when they're 35 or 40 years old. That's just the way it is. Or maybe not for you, but that's the way I see it. So when you're looking at these properties that are out there, know your buyer before you even get into those situations, and that might help you appeal to the type of buyer that you're going to need to finish the house based off of, if that makes sense. You don't want to walk into a situation and do a hack job on a 2,000 square foot, $200,000 house and anticipate that you're going to sell it for $300,000 by just throwing down some cheap carpet and paint. Real life stories exist all the time if you network a lot or you talk to a lot of investors, and one of the biggest ways for you to learn is to learn from others' mistakes and as well as your own. Keep those things in mind when you're talking to others. I mean, I'm never afraid to ask people, even on the podcast, like, what was your biggest failure, or tell us something that the audience can learn from. Because I think everybody who's been investing, has those experiences. And if they deny that fact, then they're just lying, or they haven't really been investing that long, which is fine. But again, you're gonna come across a situation where you make a mistake. An example of something that I would consider to be that move-up buyer failure, I'm gonna call it out there. This did not happen to me, but it's an experience I was involved in because the investor himself was actually one of my clients. Picked up a property in one of the suburbs here in that exact scenario for that move-up type buyer neighborhood. 2-story house, 4 bedrooms, 2 full baths, 1 half bath that happened to be in the basement. The exterior of the house, it was about 1,800, maybe 2,000 square feet. Exterior of the house was in good shape. The roof was probably 10 to 15 years old, so it was doable. Didn't need to be replaced, but something that maybe somebody be concerned about. I had an initial meeting with this investor. It actually was one of my listings. The guy picked it up for cash. He got a good deal on it, and he paid. I'm going to give you fake numbers, but they're going to be damn close to the real numbers. He paid $150,000 for this property, which was a pretty good deal. It was bank owned. It did need some work, but it didn't have anything structural. There was nothing major that I saw. It just needed to be updated. The house was built in the 80s. It still had a lot of that 80s character to it. Something needed to be done to make this a higher grade house. And there had been some flips in the neighborhood as high as like $285,000 or so. I think that was like the high end. And again, I'm kind of I'm minusing some numbers off the real amount, so we don't call anybody out here, but we'll call it 285. But that was a little bit bigger of a home. It was like 2,400 square feet. It had a third car to the garage. It had some additional amenities that created that higher price point. And again, this guy bought this house for $150,000. So he gets in there. I meet with him. He wants to sit down with me and strategize over this flip. We talk about the market. This is over a year ago, by the way, but whatever. We talk about the market. We talk about what we can expect out of that neighborhood, what type of buyers are buying there, and it's the bread and butter move up type buyer. It's somebody that's upgrading from a small home to a big home, wants to stay in the same area or community, or wants to move into a better school district, or have their kids stay in the same schools, for example. So I kind of advised him, okay, you've got older kitchen cabinets, you've got older flooring throughout, you've got older light fixtures, all the hardware on everything, and that includes doors and windows and hinges and handles. Everything was like that gold-colored crap that you see in your typical 80s style house. Even some of the 90s houses have that. And again, this is 2017 we're talking here, but this experience happened in late 2015. So I advised him on what I thought needed to be done and what I thought that potential purchase price for the end buyer could be, which at this point I was actually thinking more like the 230 to 240 range based on the comps that I currently saw in the market. Now, the one advantage that this investor had is he purchased the house in fall of 2015, and he was potentially going to have it on the market for the spring market of 2016, which is great, by the way. Wintertime or the fall is a great time to find opportunities. A lot of times, especially with bank-owned properties, the banks want to offload their distressed assets before the end of the year, and that could be anybody from Bank of America to the smallest local bank. They want to clean up their books by the end of the year so they have a better year the following year, and they do internally strategize in order to dump off more property in the fall and the winter. I mean, I've heard many times from multiple investors that the best time to buy houses is right before, that end of the year. So October, November, December. And I actually do completely agree with that. Being on the REO side for so long, I see that as well. All that said, so he's at an advantage because he's going to potentially be able to get this property fixed and put it on the spring market. I advised him on, a move-up buyer. I mean, they're going to want nice stuff. They're going to want granite. They're going to want updated flooring. They're going to want new, fresh paint. They're going to want the exterior of the house to be clean. They're going to want landscaping. They want a turnkey situation. At that point in their lives, like we talked about earlier, the move-up buyer who, let's say, is 35 to 40 or 45 years old, they're not going to want to, mess around with planting bushes in front of the house per se. I mean, sure, there's people that have a green thumb and they'd love to do it all day, and a lot of people enjoy that type of activity. But to expose your property to the most amount of buyers available, you want to take care of that stuff for them because most people are lazy. Let's get real, people. We all know that. You're lazy. I'm lazy. Maybe you're not. Maybe I'm not. Whatever. But definitely people are lazy. The masses are lazy. So you need to provide those things. You can't leave a situation like an unfinished basement and, throw something in the listing like a comment that says finished, buyer can finish to their finishing touches or whatever. I mean, can you? Absolutely. I would advise against it. At least if you're going to do something like that, paint the basement, clean it up, tidy it up as much as possible, take care of loose wires, make sure the electric is updated, put a drywall ceiling in, drywall the walls, or, just paint the actual floor and the walls. One of my favorite things to do when I'm dealing with those starter homes, which is your, 3-bedroom, 1-baths with a basement, I don't finish those basements. I paint the walls white and I paint the floors gray. That's it. Done. The buyers like it that way. They normally are interested in potentially, fixing or finishing that basement themselves to their liking because this is a startup buyer. But when we're talking about the move-up buyer on a 2-story, 2,000 square foot house for a price range around $250,000, maybe not so much. That doesn't mean you're not going to sell it to somebody, but if you can budget it in somehow to at least get that basement kind of prepped up or ready to be finished, then I think that's a better, or finish it, that's a better move personally. And I think some other investors would agree with me because even Tim, the guy that we were referencing earlier at the beginning of the podcast, he took a basement that was in bad shape and just refinished it. It's not like it's got a wet bar down there or anything, but it's at least finished with walls, drywalled, painted, everything's buttoned up. It's got nice flooring in it. It leaves a little bit more to be desired, so the buyer could go in there and maybe throw a TV on the wall and a couch if they just wanted to leave it as is and call it a finished basement, or maybe they could throw another room in there to make it their personal fitness center. Whatever. Simple stuff, though. Leaves out more opportunity for them to think about how there's more work that needs to be done. Because, again, most people are lazy. So, back to my point. Take care of those little details when you're dealing with that type of buyer. Any type of buyer, really, but especially when you're dealing with that move-up buyer. So, in this situation, back to my story, this guy, and I don't want to criticize. We've all been there. But, again, you guys are here to learn. Back in the upswing of the early 2000s, it was like everybody could become a flipper overnight. You could buy your neighbor's house in 2005 for whatever the price was, and then a month later, after maybe some exterior landscaping and a fresh coat of paint, you could throw that house back on the market for, $10,000, $20,000 more. I mean, the market was insane. The availability of money was insane. Everybody was getting overfinanced and over leveraged, but it just created the skyrocketing of pricing. And I'm sure there are people listening right now that can appreciate what I just said if they went through it themselves. This type of a market's different. The financing has eased up. There are a ton of buyers out there. As a matter of fact, I think the spring market of 2017 is going to be the biggest market since the downturn. I think it's going to be huge. Even what we're seeing right now in the end of February is that there are not enough properties out there to meet the demand, which is going to be driving prices up in that spring market. So that said, I mean, when you're considering and you're strategizing your flip, keep that in mind as well. That doesn't mean you can throw lipstick on a pig, because I think that's one of the educational downfalls that has come out of a lot of maybe inexperienced people. I'm not saying that it can't be done. I mean, if you buy a property for a song and a dance for half of its value, absolutely you can put lipstick on a pig if you wanted to. And it'll still sell if you've got it cheap enough and you're still putting it under market. But the days of throwing a coat of paint on it, you and your brother-in-law get together on a weekend and, take down a case of beer and a couple gallons of paint and, and paint a house and clean it and then being able to make $50,000 on it, those are gone. You have to put some thought into this process. You have to strategize that flip. You got to think about what finishes are going to go into it. Back to my investor story. He unfortunately did not take that advice. He did lipstick the pig, and he painted all the walls in the house the exact same color. Again, 2-story house, all the bathrooms, all the walls, everything. The color was the worst choice in the world. It was a shade of blue. The entire house was blue. I mean, like you walk in there, you feel like a Smurf because like the sun shines in, and all of a sudden you look at your skin, you're like, holy cow. It was crazy. Instead of replacing the kitchen cabinets as I advised, he actually kept the old cabinets, replaced the hardware, which I don't think is a bad idea, but that was it. So the doors were removed. The hardware was replaced in a brushed nickel finish, which I like. I think most buyers like. in this day and age. And the contractor replaced all the doors and the drawers and everything with the new hardware, and none of it actually went back together correctly. Like the cabinet doors in the kitchen wouldn't close correctly because they were kind of rubbing on each other, and it was just crappy. Now, is that the contractor's fault? Probably. But, more so the investor's fault for thinking that he can do something like that without even making an improvement. I mean, maybe you don't need to tear out the kitchen cabinets. If they're in good shape, they're stable, whatever. But, geez, throw a coat of nice gloss paint on there. Paint them white. I mean, you can get away with that still. There's a lot of people, a lot of painters, a lot of contractors that can take a 1950s cabinet that's brown and paint it white with the right finishes, sand it correctly, and the things come out like you just bought them off the shelves at Home Depot. I mean, that's awesome. That's the route that should have been taken. He did take my advice and put a slab of granite down on the countertops. How do you match granite to a blue color? I don't know. I guess you have to have shades of blue or silver or gray or something in there. He chose your standard, like your brown, beige, type granite. It didn't even match. Some of the light fixtures were replaced in the house. He chose to only replace things that were cheap and inexpensive instead of doing like the chandelier in the dining room, which again was gold and from 1980. He left there because he said, well, it's $200 for a new chandelier. I said, well, not exactly. Maybe you need to shop around, but I just don't like it. All the flooring was replaced with carpet. He even covered up hardwood with carpet. It was a low-grade beige color. It was cheap. It was poorly installed on top of that because this guy's trying to save money. I can appreciate that. And maybe I'm taking the wrong route, but I'm trying not to be negative here, but hopefully somebody learns from this podcast. I highly doubt this investor listens to the podcast, and if he does, I apologize because I don't think he'll know who he is, but whatever. So low-grade carpets. Again, this shade of blue paint throughout every single room. The exterior, I mean, he basically chopped down all the bushes to nothing. I mean, they were pretty much dead by the time the work was done. He didn't want to replace anything, but he did throw down a coat of mulch in the landscape areas, and he did not blacktop. He did seal coat the driveway, which I think looked great. On top of that, he cleaned everything, and let's talk about bathrooms. Everybody's looking for double sinks nowadays. If you've got a master bath, you need to double sink it. You need to do the his and hers thing. I mean, if you have no option, if you're dealing with a one-bedroom house and it doesn't work, it doesn't fit, then fine. That's totally understandable because that's the type of buyer that's looking for that type of property. I mean, they expect one bathroom, and they're used to, if they've seen any of the other properties that you're competing with, they're used to seeing that one bathroom and the size of it. That's okay. I mean, if you can put in a bigger vanity with double sinks, then great. If you can't, that's fine. But what we're talking about right now is that move-up situation. So, that same thing, he replaced vanity tops. He didn't replace. So the vanity top is the actual ceramic, stone, whatever quality top. He replaced it with your kind of a standard ceramic white top on top of the old vanities that were there, which is the brown oak from 1980. And yes, it had new hardware. But when I walked through this property before potentially listing it, I should say, because it didn't end up getting listed, not by me, at least, I noted like, hey, the doorknob to the bedroom upstairs, the master bedroom is this shade of silver. But then when I go into the bathroom off the master, you have a bronze door. I'm like, what's with the doorknobs, man? Oh, well, yeah, I got them from like the discontinued bin at the store. And I'm like, yeah, no, man, you're saving nickels to pick up pennies here. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, don't do that. Spend the money on the stuff that's going to make it look better. All the doors were still the original oak color, which, again, I guess I can go with, maybe. That's not really the style that's in. But the neighborhood, the houses that were getting rehabbed or getting updated, they had 6-panel white doors, and they had the brushed nickel finish for the hardware. I mean, we went and looked at some of the comparables that were in this neighborhood. And then, again, that's not what he was doing, but that's something that you should be doing. So if you're looking in a particular neighborhood to pick up a flip, if you get a flip under contract to purchase, if you have something in mind that you're going to be able to get your hands on, go look at what else is on the market. You can start with photos. I think that's a great idea. It might be the only way if you don't have accessibility to a broker or realtor to let you in on listed properties, or you can't get in a for sale by owner. But walk through an open house one afternoon. check out what the competition is doing, see what other properties look like, see how people are upgrading their houses. You don't need to tile the entire, bathroom from floor to ceiling with some high finish marble necessarily. Maybe you do. I guess it depends on the neighborhood, but you need to know what the competition is doing. So that's another piece of advice. That'll be my number 2. I think I said a number 1 at one point earlier in this podcast. Now that's the number 2. Look at the competition, see what they're doing, and if you want to command a higher price, that doesn't mean you can't make it better. You absolutely can. I mean, if your house is going to be the best looking house in the neighborhood, then absolutely you should be bumping up that price. Now, I can't determine on a podcast what exactly those finishes are going to look like, but if you're using a higher grade tile and you're putting all granite in, and you've got your 6-panel doors, and maybe you replace all the old wood windows to vinyl windows, and none of the competition has that, the first thing I'd be making sure of is, A, did you go overboard? Was it really necessary? Or could you have sold that property the way it was, without maybe those windows or some of those upgrades? The second thing is, if you're going to raise the price on it and you're going to try to, be the highest price home on the block or in the neighborhood, make sure you're not going to overprice it to the point where no one's going to want to look at it anyway. Because typically the people that are going to look at those houses in that neighborhood are seeing these other properties, and if your house is $50,000 higher than the competition, they're going to expect to see the Taj Mahal. And if it is the Taj Mahal, by all means, price it higher. But the other thing you got to contend with is the appraised value. Most buyers that are in that move-up position, probably in the 85 to 95 percentile range, are getting financing. So in order to obtain financing, the house has to appraise out. There's only so much that even a good appraiser can do to take a comp that's $50,000 less and compare that value and drag it up to the point where it's going to match the price point that you're selling at. A bad appraiser, which is probably more of the majority of what you're going to deal with, they're not going to be able to do that, and they're going to just appraise it lower. And then what happens is you end up selling that house for the same price anyway of the comparables. So just be careful when you're choosing your finishes. Keep an eye on the competition. Go look at those properties. Look at the photos at a minimum. Get inside of them. Get a feel for them. See what else they've done to the property. Have they converted some type of a room into an in-law arrangement? Have they taken the basement and made it into a home entertainment area? Did they throw up cabinets in the garage and shelving to kind of finish it off a little bit, which is not necessarily something that I would recommend, but I mean, that is a pretty cheap, quick, and easy fix to add a little bit of flair to that garage. Throw up some cabinets. If you got some extra, maybe from the original construction of the house, meaning when you started your rehab, you tore out the kitchen cabinets, you've got, 6, 10, 11, 12 cabinets left over. You could easily throw those up on the garage wall and, use the base cabinets as the start of a workbench for that potential buyer. Go to the Home Depot, whatever, grab butcher block top, throw it on top of your base cabinets, and boom, you've got a semi-simple workbench that might appeal to some of those buyers. Okay, so we talked about a few things already. We kind of talked about knowing your market. We talked about determining your buyer. We talked about this guy who didn't do what I had recommended. The moral to that story is he ended up throwing that property on the market in the spring, as he should have, for $285,000, which was like $50,000 more than I recommended, and at the very top of what that neighborhood commanded. And again, that was if they had an extra couple hundred square feet plus an additional garage space. And I only know because I followed it for a little while. It sat on the market for over 6 months. It did end up selling. It sold for considerably less than what that investor had hoped for, which is unfortunate because I really don't want to see that. And I don't want to be Mr. Know-It-All saying like, haha, I told you so either. So I'm not going to dwell on it, but you guys need to understand that you need to stay within the means of your market when you're strategizing for your flip. You need to consider that when you're pricing your properties, not only on the buy side, but also on the sell side, and when you're putting in your finishes. I see some investors that are commonly going to these higher-end kitchen places, and I don't know why. I can't figure that out. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense, but these houses are not your houses. You're not going to live in this house. I get it. Like, a lot of people are listening going like, hey, well, I mean, but if I like it and that's the house, that's what I'd want in my house, then someone else should like it in my house or in their house. Yeah, maybe. I don't think it's worth that expense. If you're going to spend, $15,000 on kitchen cabinets or $10,000 on kitchen cabinets from, the high-end cabinet distributor you find at a strip mall that only sells, cabinets and countertops and high-end appliances, I think you're going the wrong direction unless you're in a really high-end, like a luxury type market. That's maybe the fourth category that we didn't bring up, but that's something I don't have a lot of experience in, so I don't want to do it. I have a lot of experience with investors that have tried it and not had it not work out, where they've even bought massive luxury type properties for great deals and still end up losing their butt because, they put a ton of money into them to try to match what they think the market wants, and they still, maybe they still make the same amount of margin they would have made on a regular flip at a $200,000 or $300,000 price range instead of the $700,000 price range. But back to my point, those cabinets that they sell at the box stores, those are fine. You can get some really nice stuff there. You can go to these direct cabinet distributors that are like, making cabinets on kind of like an assembly line and get high quality finishes. You can get the soft close stuff. You can get, these drawers that are built properly and have the extended reach type drawers, which is all what buyers like to see. And then let's talk about stainless steel appliances. You don't need to buy like the high end freaking $2,000, stove range, whatever. I mean, again, if you're in $1 million property, I take it back. But your standard move up or your starter home type flips, just go with your low end Frigidaire stainless steel stuff. It looks good. Everybody likes it. If they don't like it, they're going to get it anyway, and they can replace it if they want. But it looks good. It shows well. It should work for at least 5 years, hopefully, before they need to replace it. Don't let that be one of your problems. Don't spend the money on something because you think that that's what the house should have or that's what people are going to like because that's what you like. This is not a favorites game of what you prefer. This is what the market likes. This is what the buyer in that market likes. If all your competition in the neighborhood happens to be, installing outdoor fire pits and outdoor kitchens, okay, like Tarek and Christina, yeah, sure, maybe, go for it. But there's no reason to put that in to your standard flip where you're the only house in the neighborhood that has it unless you're just trying to move into it yourself or you really, really are going to be able to maximize that sale price based on that fact. I mean, I don't know what situation other than just, pure appealing to a lot of different buyers would cause you to throw in a $5,000 or $10,000 outdoor kitchen in the backyard. But for the sake of running your business like a business and being a flipper and moving that property quickly and being efficient with the amount of money that you're going to spend, yeah, it's unnecessary. It may be nice and maybe it will help that property, fly off the market in a couple days, but I don't know if you're going to recoup that cost of $5,000 or $10,000. So I don't see the need for it. If you can prove it with the data, if you're working with a broker that can show you that, or if the comparables have shown that if you throw in an outdoor kitchen or, update whatever appliances in that house to above and beyond your standard BS, Frigidaire stainless steel, then by all means, as long as it's going to make you more money. Keep in mind, if you're going to spend, if you would normally spend $2,000 on appliances to finish out a kitchen and you're going to spend $5,000, I hope you're going to get at least $6,000 back in return for that investment. Otherwise, go with the standard. Don't overthink it. Sometimes investors can be their own worst enemy by trying to go above and beyond. Actually, back to Tim again, the guy who kind of inspired this podcast. He was smart about the way he is in a move-up house. The competition does have some higher-end appliances, and he went to the store right after Christmas and bought a bunch of the returned, we'll call it scratch and dent, but not necessarily. It's just stuff that was returned. It's unboxed item, open box type stuff. He got a discount on it, and he still got some higher grade appliances. I mean, I thought that was a great idea because in that style of house, which is like a 2,000 square foot, typical move up house that we're talking about here, 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, that made sense for that neighborhood. Some of the other things that he did as well, which we're going to get him on the podcast to maybe explain his story once this property sells, is he is a carpenter by trade, so he's able to go above and beyond on the trim work. He can do that labor easily himself, so that's what he did. He bought low-end crown, and he crown molded all the rooms in the property. He put in some wainscoting in the master bedroom, which looks phenomenal. In the bottom floor, like the formal dining room. I mean, in the end, the cost of those materials very, very low. He did the labor himself. It probably took him a day or two to install that stuff, maybe a little bit more. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit. But for somebody like me or you who can barely figure out how the chop saw is supposed to go down and without cutting their hands off, which isn't 100% true, by the way. I used to use those things all the time, but I just don't anymore. That's not your thing. So keep it simple. Go with what the market bears. Don't overdo it. If you can afford to throw in a little touch here and there and it's going to be at a low cost and it makes sense and maybe the competition is going to put you a little bit above that competition or at least meet the bar, then absolutely. But don't be pissing away tons of money on those things. So I think we talked about a lot on strategizing the flip. Just to wrap it up, I want to just kind of touch on the finishes that you should be considering. I know I kind of mentioned kitchen cabinets. All I'm saying is unless you're getting a steal of a deal or, your best friend's sister, whatever, happens to be the manager of the cabinet, whatever place at the strip mall or to some degree or the granite joint or whatever, unless you're getting a real smoking price on it, go with the standard. There are plenty of ways to save money. And I know on my previous episode, I think it was episode number 33, we called it Working with Contractors in the Big Box Store. Actually, let me check to make sure that was the episode number. All right, I stand corrected. The actual episode that I was referencing that I had a couple weeks ago was episode number 31, Working with Contractors in the Big Box Store spreadsheet. You can become incredibly efficient at choosing your materials. You can find tile that looks awesome in kitchens and bathrooms for $1 a square foot or $1.50 a square foot. I get it. Like, you see all these people on TV and they're like arguing, oh my God, that's $4 a square foot. Oh, look at this one. It's only $3 a square foot. Yeah. Go to your local box store, spend some time there, write down the SKU numbers, put it in your spreadsheet, take a picture of it, go online, have a way to cross-reference it back between the cost and the SKU number, whatever, so you know exactly what it looks like. Tell your contractor what you want. You don't need to spend extra money. There's even some stores around us in Chicago called Hobo, which stands for Home Owners Bargain Outlet. They have like the maddest selection of tile that I've ever seen in my life, other than like a Tile City type store that's like all they do is sell tile. Hobo has all types of lower end junk as well as nice quality items as well. But a lot of it's discounted, a lot of it's discontinued. So, keep that in mind as well. When you are measuring for your bathroom surround or your bathroom floors and kitchens and things, maybe buy a couple extra boxes, because in case there's one or two cracked tiles, you don't want to be the point where you got to run back to the store and all of a sudden you realize that you bought the last box or someone else bought the last box 2 days ago and you can no longer get that style of tile. That would really suck. That's some of the prices you pay to get that type of price when you're going to those types of stores and saving some money on, discounted items like that. Just keep it in mind. But that said, there are ways to save money by just becoming more efficient, working with these guys at the stores, looking around, going to Menards during the 11% sale. Awesome. Do it. It doesn't mean you go buy a $300 vanity and top instead of the $189 vanity and top that you should have, because you're saving 11%. That just means that you might be able to get something at a cheaper price, and maybe that'll compensate for maybe some type of expense you have later that you weren't expecting. So let's sum up some things real quick. Know your market, right? That's number one. Know the properties, know what they're selling for. Go look at some comms, go look at some stuff for sale. See what other rehabbers are doing. Shit, you can even contact those people. I mean, again, beating the networking drum. Most investors are okay with discussing their properties and projects with other investors. They're not going to necessarily feel threatened by you asking questions. Set up a meeting, whatever. But know your market. Know who's working that market. Find out what properties are selling, which ones are selling faster than others, and why. Could be location-based. Maybe they're on a busier street. Maybe the one next door has a big, playground within a couple hundred feet of it. Whatever it is, figure out why property A sold faster than property B, or maybe a little bit more for a little bit more money than property C, whatever that is. So know your market. Go look at properties when you're determining what you're going to be buying. So that way you're ready to pounce when that right opportunity comes up. And you know how to finish that property by remembering number 2, which is determining who your buyer is. The move-up buyer versus the starter buyer versus the baby boomer. We haven't even gotten into the whole fix-to-rent or flip to rent type strategy, which is actually my main focus of business. But so you've got those basics down right now. And then third is know how to finish the property. You don't want to lipstick a pig on a 2,000 square foot house. You don't want to put down, low grade carpeting in those types of properties. Don't make it look like a rental. Don't paint all the rooms the exact same color. I mean, maybe it works for most of it, but at least, change up the color of the kitchens and the baths or something. Provide some landscaping, take away the guesswork for that move-up buyer or the baby boomer, for example. When you're dealing with condos, you can really deck out a condo real nice. You could also lose your ass in that process trying to do that. So keep it simple. Use higher quality stuff that's at a good price. Use your, I don't shy away from granite at all. I mean, I use granite all the time. Find the best price for that granite. It doesn't have to be, like the universal ocean blue, whatever, high quality stuff that costs, $40 a square foot installed. You can just put in a simple low to medium grade granite. People appreciate that. Neutral colors, stuff that blends into the room, works with the cabinets and the floor. Provide a little contrast. Some of that stuff that happens on TV, I actually do say is some good advice, which is the contrast aspect. You got dark, you got light, things like that. That can work. You got white cabinets, put a dark top on there. If the floor at that point can be anywhere from oak hardwood light to some type of laminate to some type of lighter tile to even a darker tile, it can work. I mean, a nice dark gray tile with some white cabinets and maybe a darker gray or a slate colored top, granite top, phenomenal. Consider those factors before you're actually spending money, before you're making these purchase decisions and spending the higher end money just to put in a $40 or $50 square foot piece of granite when a $30 piece would work. So we talked about that. Then the final thing I want to bring up, which I know you guys can tell I'm starting to slide a little bit here, is the fixed to rent type strategy. I do believe that, in my opinion, at least the market I'm working in, I have more success with tenants, long-term tenants that stay longer, and less maintenance by going the extra few steps and spending a little bit more money up front. So I finish a lot of my rentals very similar to a flip. That doesn't mean I'm like residing houses, for example, or replacing all the windows. That's only as needed. If I have to, if the siding is shot or the windows are screwed, yeah, of course I'm going to replace them because I don't want to deal with the problem later on anyway. But putting in the same quality cabinets I would put into a flip, I put into my rentals. I throw in granite, I would say, in 75% of my rentals, depending on the market again, because it's low maintenance. It's not a laminate top that can easily be scratched or chipped. It's something that's going to last forever. I mean, they'd have to take like a sledgehammer to it to do something to it. So, in my opinion, that can really help. Even on flips, there's a lot of guys out there that leave old plumbing and piping and stuff like that. Well, I don't buy rental houses that are going to be that move up type buyer house. I'm not buying 2,000 square foot 2-story rental houses. I'm buying your starter homes. I'm buying your 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1.5 bath. Maybe there's a basement. Hopefully there's a garage. That type of thing. I feel like you can do those upgrades in there, and it's going to be a great property for rental. And you can command a higher rent. I've mentioned that many times in the podcast. If you are the nicest rental, you're going to rent for a higher amount, or at least the amount that's going to be on the high end of what that market provides for that style and size of house. And then you're going to have lower maintenance. So if you do happen to have the opportunity, which it's a lot less expensive to replumb an entire house in copper that happens to be a 1-story ranch on a crawl, for example, because the plumber's in and out of there in 2 days anyway, as opposed to like a 2-story house where they're running pipe, up 20, 30 feet to the second floor from the basement, whatever. Because when you do that type of thing, it avoids that potential maintenance issue in the future. If you're tearing out all the old, galvanized and plumbing drains and things like that and putting in PVC, you've almost guaranteed that for the lifespan of that rental, if you want to keep it long term, that you're not going to be experiencing issues with it. Now, there's no such thing as a 100% guarantee, obviously, because there's always going to be some type of plumbing connection that's going to be old and could potentially be a problem. But what I've seen is the houses that I've chosen not to do those types of upgrades in, ultimately, those are the ones I'm getting maintenance on, where, as a matter of fact, this morning I got a phone call from a tenant that said I had a bathtub that was clogged and they couldn't drain. And I sent out the plumber, and he's out there for an hour, and he drops his camera in there, and he basically says, well, yeah, the drainage for this particular tub is old. It's old metal drains. He's like, this stuff all needs to be replaced in PVC. He's like, I got it cleared out for now, but next time this tenant turns, it's a good idea to have that replaced. Now, yeah, sure. It's not even expensive to do that. I mean, for this particular property I'm referencing, which is exactly what we've been talking about, your bread and butter starter home, we're talking, $500 to get that done. But the inconvenience of getting the phone call, right? The inconvenience of scheduling the plumber and being the go-between of the tenant and the plumber, making sure the tenant's going to be home on time because, she's got to go to church at whatever time, making sure the plumber's going to be on time, which maybe he's not because he's leaving another job and he gets caught up there. I mean, those types of things. So give that some thought if you're looking at that flip to rent strategy. But as I said, we're talking about strategizing your flip today. Hopefully you got something out of it. Any questions, any comments, please feel free to shoot me an email, joe@tanisgroupllc.com. Go on iTunes and Stitcher. Please give me a rating. I'm more than willing to have your compliments and criticisms. I wonder if I can delete those, by the way. I don't think so. It's kind of like Facebook. When somebody says something bad on there, it doesn't go away, at least on my Facebook business page. But anyway, I'm okay with discussing it. I'd love to hear more opinion if you've got a different theory or strategy. And you know what? Finally, let's talk about staging. I think if you're going to be flipping houses, you need to consider staging as one of your strategies and methods to help sell your home quicker. I think the $2,000 or the $2,500 you're going to spend on a stager for a $250,000 property, I think you can't go wrong personally. Nobody wants to spend that type of money, obviously, but if it can help you sell that property faster, depending on how you funded it, however it's financed, if you've got hard money, I don't know if it's your own money, whatever it is, it's going to be different for every investor, but give that some thought. There's plenty of staging companies out there. You can compare them against each other, and worst case scenario, you can go to some of these outlet stores and buy your own. If you're going to be a professional flipper and run your business the way a real flipper should run their business, then maybe you need to get your own staging equipment and furniture and things like that. You need to buy all those vases with the fake plants in them. You need to have your candle sets and your dining room tables and chairs and maybe a couple couches and some throw rugs. I mean, just give them the appeal of how they could finish that property. I personally have zero skill set when it comes to that, so I wouldn't be buying that furniture. I'd be hiring a stager. But again, just another strategy you can consider. Probably more to follow on this topic, but we're already in it for 45 minutes, so I'm going to let you guys go. Again, contact me. Any questions, compliments, concerns, criticisms. Have a great weekend. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. Be sure to tune in next week for another empowering episode. We welcome your feedback, so please rate us on iTunes and Stitcher, and visit us at www.investoремpowermentchicago.com or TanisGroupRealty.com.